What if Robb Stark never died? The night that was meant to drown the North in blood did not end the way the songs later claimed. The Red Wedding was still red, still cruel, but fate hesitated for one single moment, and that moment changed everything. Robb Stark felt the danger before he saw it. Maybe it was the way the music stopped too suddenly, or the way the Fremen smiled without warmth. His direwolf Grey Wind howled from outside, a sound full of fear and rage. Robb's hand went to his sword without thinking. He turned to look at his mother, Catelyn, and in her eyes he saw the same realization. This was no wedding, this was a slaughter. Steel flashed, chaos exploded. Robb moved on instinct, pulling Talisa back just as the first arrow flew past where his heart had been. The arrow struck a Stark bannerman instead. Screams filled the hall. Frey soldiers drew hidden blades. Boltons revealed their betrayal with flayed man sigils stitched under their cloaks. Robb fought like a man already dead. He cut down 2 men before they could reach him. Blood soaked the floor, mixing with spilled wine. Talisa was screaming his name, trying to hold on to him, trying to keep him alive. Catelyn grabbed Robb's arm and shouted for him to run. For once, Robb Stark listened. A small group of loyal Northmen closed around their king. They forced a path through the hall, shields raised, swords swinging. Robb took a blade to the shoulder, another across his ribs, but he stayed on his feet. Grey Wind broke free outside, attacking the guards, creating just enough confusion. They escaped through a side passage meant for servants. Not many survived. Most of Robb's army died that night, butchered while unarmed and trusting. Talisa did not make it. An arrow found her as they ran. Robb felt something inside him break when she fell. But there was no time to grieve. Survival came first. Grief would come later, and it would be heavy. By dawn, Robb Stark was no longer a boy king leading a proud army. He was a hunted man with a broken crown and a shattered heart. News spread fast, twisted and poisoned. The Lannisters claimed Robb Stark was dead. The Freys swore it. The Boltons smiled and accepted their reward. The North was told their king had fallen like a fool. Many believed it because believing was easier than hope. But the North remembers. Robb moved in shadows, traveling from holdfast to holdfast, trusting only the old names. The mountain clans hid him. Small lords swore secret oaths in dark rooms. Mothers told their children that the young wolf still lived, that he would come back when the snow was right. Robb was not the same man. He no longer spoke of honor the way his father had. He spoke of consequences. He learned to lie. He learned to wait. Every smile he gave was careful. Every promise was measured. The boy who rode south with banners flying had died at the Twins. What remained was harder, colder, and far more dangerous. When winter deepened, Robb finally returned to the North openly. Not as a crowned king, but as a war leader. He let the Boltons believe they were safe. He let the Freys believe the lie of his death. Then he struck. The first castle to fall was small, but its lord had sworn to Bolton. Robb showed no mercy. The message was clear. Betrayal would be answered with blood. Lords who wavered chose quickly. Some bent the knee. Others were dragged from their halls and hanged. By the time Ramsay Bolton realized the truth, it was too late. The North rose not because Robb asked them to, but because they were angry, tired, and ashamed of kneeling to traitors. Robb Stark did not need a crown anymore. He had something, stronger belief, and far to the south in King's Landing, whispers began to spread. Whispers that the young wolf still lived. Whispers that the war was not over. Whispers that the war was not over. Whispers that the North had teeth again. The snow fell heavier as Robb moved deeper into the North, and with it came silence, the kind that listens. Villages that once rang with laughter now watched strangers from behind shuttered windows. People were afraid. Afraid of the Boltons, afraid of wrong words, afraid of hope itself. Robb understood that fear better than anyone. He had trusted once, and it had nearly killed him. He stayed hidden, never sleeping in the same place twice. His wound festered for days, fever pulling him in and out of dark dreams where he relived the wedding again and again. Talisa's face haunted him most, not the moment she died, but the way she smiled earlier that day, unaware that death was already sharpening its knives. Robb woke some nights choking on grief, fingers clawing at empty air. Those were the nights he reminded himself why he lived. Not for crowns, not for songs, for justice. Messages were sent quietly. No ravens with seals. Only men on horseback who knew the old paths and older words. The reply was always the same, whispered but firm. We remember. The Umbers sent food. The Mormonts sent fighters. Even houses that had bent the knee to the Boltons began to hedge, offering shelter by accident, losing patrols by mistake. Robb let them come to him. He watched who hesitated and who acted. Loyalty born of fear meant nothing to him now. He wanted loyalty that chose him knowing the cost. Winterfell was the wound that bled the most. Robb stood on a ridge one night, looking down at the broken towers of his home in the distance. Smoke curled from within. The flayed man flew where the direwolf once had. His jaw tightened until it ached. He did not cry. He did not shout. He only memorized the sight, carving it into his mind so he would never forget who took it and how they would pay. The first real battle came sooner than expected. A Bolton patrol, overconfident and drunk, rode into a narrow pass thinking the snow made them untouchable. Robb chose the ground carefully. When the horn sounded, it was already over. The snow ran red, steaming in the cold air. Robb personally cut down the patrol captain, looking him in the eyes as he did it. There was no anger in him now, only resolve. He made sure survivors were sent back alive. Tell them, he said quietly, the young wolf hunts again. Fear spread faster than banners ever could. The Boltons answered with cruelty. Villages suspected of helping Robb were burned. Men were flayed and nailed to trees as warnings. It worked for a time, but cruelty breeds hatred, and hatred grows roots. Mothers hid Robb's men in barns. Children carried messages in their boots. The North turned into a trap, and the Boltons were standing in the middle of it. Robb began to change the way he fought. No grand charges, no proud challenges. He attacked supply lines, vanished into forests, struck at night. Each small victory weakened the enemy while strengthening his legend. Lords who once mocked him as a boy began to fear him as something else entirely. Word reached him from the south, carried by a trader who swore he only wanted silver. His sister Sansa Stark was still alive, a hostage, a pawn. The knowledge hit Robb harder than any blade. Guilt settled in his chest, heavy and unmoving. He had ridden south to protect his family. Instead, they had paid for his mistakes. For the first time since the twins, Robb hesitated. His advisors argued. Some said forget the south, win the north first. Others said strike now, while the enemy was distracted. Robb listened to all of them, then made his choice alone, as kings must. He would take back the north first. Power before rescue. Without strength, any attempt to save her would only get her killed. It was a decision that cost him sleep. As winter deepened, Robb's forces grew bold enough to move openly. The flayed banners began to fall. Castles changed hands without fights as Bolton men fled rather than face him. Ramsay's name became a curse spat into the snow. And somewhere in Winterfell, the Boltons realized too late that they had not killed the young wolf when they had the chance. They had only taught him how to survive. Winterfell did not fall in a single day. It bled first. Robb ordered the roads cut, the storehouses burned outside the walls, and every raven tower watched. No message left Winterfell without his knowledge. The castle that had once been the heart of the North became a stone cage, slowly starving. Ramsay Bolton responded the only way he knew how, with cruelty. Prisoners were dragged onto the walls and screamed as they were tortured, hoping fear would break the besiegers. It didn't. The North had seen worse. Robb watched the walls from a distance, his breath turning white in the cold air. Every scream twisted something inside him, but he did not look away. He could not afford weakness now. This was not about rage. This was about ending something rotten before it poisoned the land forever. When the attack came, it came at night. Snow muted the sound of boots. Ladders went up where the walls were weakest, just as Robb's scouts had mapped. Fires were set in 3 different places to confuse the defenders. Horns sounded too late. By the time the Boltons understood it was a real assault, Stark men were already inside. The fighting was brutal and close. No songs would ever be sung about it. Men slipped in blood on frozen stone. Screams echoed through corridors Rob had run through as a child. More than once, he had to force himself forward when memories tried to pull him back. He found Ramsay in the great hall. Ramsay Bolton stood near the high table, smiling even as the battle raged around him. He looked thinner, more tired, but his eyes were the same sharp and empty. "So the dead boy walks," Ramsay said lightly. "I should have cut your head off myself." Rob did not answer. He drew his sword. They circled each other, steel flashing in torchlight. Ramsay was faster than Rob expected, wild and unpredictable. He fought like someone who enjoyed the chaos. Rob fought like someone who had learned patience the hard way. Blow after blow rang out, echoing off the stone. Ramsay laughed as he fought. "You think this makes you king again?" Rob finally spoke. "No." He disarmed Ramsay with a sharp twist, sending the sword skidding across the floor. Ramsay stumbled back, shock flashing across his face for the first time. "This makes the North free," Rob said. He did not kill Ramsay quickly. He did not flay him. He did not become what his enemies were. Ramsay was taken alive, bound, and dragged before the gathered lords the next morning. The courtyard filled as the sun rose. Northern banners appeared one by one, as if the castle itself was remembering who it belonged to. Rob stood before them, bloodied, exhausted, alive. Ramsay was executed for treason. No speech, no spectacle, just justice. When it was over, silence fell. Every eye turned to Rob, waiting. He did not ask for a crown. "I died once," he said, voice carrying across the stone. "I died because I trusted the wrong people and believed honor alone could win wars. I won't make that mistake again." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I don't ask you to kneel," Rob continued. "Kneeling can be forced. I ask you to choose. Choose the North. Choose each other. If you follow me, it will not be easy. But it will be ours." One by one, they bent the knee anyway. Not because tradition demanded it, because they wanted to. The direwolf banner rose over Winterfell once more. That night, Rob walked the godswood alone. Snow clung to the branches, heavy and quiet. He knelt before the heart tree, placing a bloodied hand against its white bark. For the first time since the twins, he allowed himself to grieve. For Talissa, for his men, for the boy he had been. By morning, the war was no longer just about the North. Ravens flew south with Stark seals. Rob called his banners and sent word to allies, old and new. The Lannisters would hear soon enough. The king they thought they had murdered was stronger now, sharper, and done playing their game. And somewhere far away, his sister waited behind enemy walls. Robb Stark intended to bring her home. The Raven reached King's Landing at dawn. The maester read it twice before his hands started to shake. By the time the message reached the small council, the city was already waking, unaware that the lie holding it together had just cracked. Robb Stark lived. Winterfell had fallen back into Stark hands. The North was not broken. It was marching. Panic hid behind polished words. Cersei Lannister crushed the parchment in her fist. "Impossible," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. She had built too much on Robb Stark being dead. The phrase treachery, the Bolton's reward, the fear that followed it all depended on that single corpse. A living Stark king meant questions. Questions led to doubt. Doubt led to rebellion, and rebellion was something King's Landing could not afford. Gold cloaks doubled patrols. Ravens were sent west and south, begging for troops that did not exist. The crown was drowning in debt and enemies, and now a ghost had returned with an army. Cersei ordered executions of anyone caught whispering Robb's name. It only made the whispers louder. In the Red Keep, another prisoner heard the news with quiet disbelief. Sansa Stark stood at a narrow window, hands pressed against cold stone. A servant had let it slip while trembling, eyes darting toward the door. "The young wolf lives. Winterfell is free." For the first time in years, Sansa felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. She buried it deep. Hope had hurt her before. Still, that night she dreamed of snow and home and a brother who did not bow. Robb moved carefully as he marched south. He did not rush, no matter how badly he wanted to. Every mile was secured. Every lord was tested. He made alliances not with promises of glory, but with shared enemies. The riverlands stirred again, banners rising where they had once fallen. Men who had survived the Red Wedding came out of hiding, hungry for justice. The Freys were first to fall. Robb did not storm the Twins. He surrounded it and waited. Trade stopped. Allies vanished. Inside, Walder Frey aged 10 years in a month. When the gates finally opened, it was not for battle, but surrender. Robb did not butcher them as they had butchered his men. He stripped them of lands, titles, and protection. The name Frey became poison, spoken only in curses. The message was clear: betrayal would not be rewarded again. As Robb drew closer to the capital, another player moved in the shadows. Tyrion Lannister had learned long ago to survive by seeing the truth others ignored. He believed the Raven. More than that, he understood it. Killing Robb Stark had been the pillar holding the Lannister victory together. Without it, everything leaned toward collapse. He sent a message of his own, quiet, indirect, meant to be intercepted only by the right people. He did not offer loyalty. He offered information. Secret paths. Names of lords ready to switch sides. King's Landing was a viper's nest, and Tyrion knew where it slept. Robb read the message in silence. Trust did not come easily anymore. But enemies of enemies were still useful. He agreed to nothing and prepared for everything. The closer he came, the more the realm changed. Small folk cheered when they saw the direwolf. Some cried. Some knelt. Robb did not stop them. He did not promise miracles. He promised an end to lies. Inside King's Landing, fear turned inward. The court ate itself alive. Accusations flew. Old alliances shattered. The crown looked strong only from a distance. Up close, it was already cracked. Sansa watched the city from behind her walls, counting days by footsteps and shadows. She learned which guards talked too much, which servants listened. Survival had taught her patience. If Robb truly was coming, she would be ready. The war was no longer about revenge. It was about exposure. And when Robb Stark finally reached the gates of King's Landing, he did not come as a boy seeking his father's justice. He came as a king who understood how power really worked and how to break it. King's Landing began to rot from the inside before a single Stark banner appeared at its gates. Food prices tripled in days. Bread riots spread through Flea Bottom like wildfire. Gold cloaks beat men in the streets, but even they were hungry, unpaid, and tired of bleeding for liars. Every whisper carried the same name now: Robb Stark. Not shouted, not praised openly, just spoken, like a truth people were afraid to believe in case it vanished. Inside the Red Keep, the throne felt heavier than ever. Joffrey Baratheon raged like a cornered animal. He ordered heads on spikes for rumors alone. A singer lost his tongue for a song that mentioned wolves. None of it helped. Fear without strength only invites collapse, and everyone could feel it coming. Cersei tried to control the damage, but the city no longer listened. Even the walls seemed to lean away from her. Every report made it worse: river lords defecting, supply lines cut, sellswords vanishing overnight. Robb Stark had not attacked yet, and still the capital was losing. Sansa moved through the Red Keep like a shadow. She had learned where the stones were loose, where the guards drank too much, where secrets gathered like dust. When word reached her that Robb's army had been sighted days away, she did not smile. She prepared. She hid food. She memorized routes. She trusted no one completely, not even hope. The night before Robb arrived, the city exploded. A riot near the Mud Gate turned into a massacre. Gold cloaks broke. Fires spread. Bells rang without orders. From the hills outside the city, Stark scouts watched smoke rise and knew the time had come. Robb did not order an immediate assault. He sent a message instead. The letter was simple. It named crimes, lies, broken oaths. It offered mercy to the city, not the crown. The gates would open. The people would be spared. Resistance would be crushed. There was no anger in the words, only certainty. The small council argued until voices broke. Some wanted to flee. Others wanted to fight. No one wanted to die for Joffrey. At dawn, the gates opened, not wide, just enough. The fighting that followed was short and brutal. Stark forces moved with purpose, guided by hands inside the city. Key towers fell, commanders were captured in their beds. The Red Keep sealed itself off, a lion hiding behind stone. Robb entered the city on horseback, cloaked dark with road dust, eyes cold and alert. The people watched him pass in silence. He did not wave, he did not bow. He looked like a man who had buried too much to care for appearances. Inside the Red Keep, betrayal finished what fear had started. The throne room was taken without a siege. Gold cloaks stepped aside, some even knelt. When Robb walked beneath the Iron Throne, he did not sit. He looked up at it, at the twisted blades and the blood they had cost, and felt nothing. Cersei was arrested before sunset. Joffrey screamed until the end, demanding obedience from men who no longer believed in him. His crown meant nothing without loyalty. When he was dragged away, the sound echoed through the hall like something breaking. Robb found Sansa in a quiet chamber overlooking the city. For a moment, they only stared at each other. Then she ran to him, and he held her like he might lose her if he let go. No words could cover what had been taken from them. None were needed. "You came," she whispered. "I promised," Robb said. The city fell silent that night, not in fear, but exhaustion. The war that had burned the realm for years was not over, but something had shifted. A lie had died. Truth stood in its place, scarred and breathing. Robb Stark stood at the heart of the realm, not as a conqueror, but as a reminder of what broken oaths cost. And far beyond the city, other powers were watching. Judgment came slower than conquest. King's Landing did not explode in the celebration. It held its breath. The people waited to see what kind of ruler had replaced the monsters they knew. Robb understood that fear. He felt it himself every time he walked past the Iron Throne and chose not to sit. Trials began at first light. Lords who had sworn false oaths were brought forward one by one. Some begged, some blamed others. Some stood silent, already knowing their fate. Robb listened to all of them. He did not shout. He did not insult. That frightened them more than anger ever could. Those who had ordered massacres were executed. Those who had followed out of fear were stripped of power and sent away. Robb refused to paint the world in simple colors. He knew too well how easy it was to make a mistake and how hard it was to live with one. Cersei was the last. She stood tall, even in chains, hatred burning behind her eyes. She spoke of family, of enemies, of sacrifices made for the crown. Robb let her finish. "You ruled with fear," he said calmly, "and fear devoured you." She was sentenced to life in confinement, her name erased from power. Death would have made her a martyr. Robb had learned that lesson too. The Iron Throne remained empty. That unsettled everyone. Lords pressed him. The people whispered. The realm needed a king, they said. Robb answered the same way every time. A crown does not fix what is broken. Instead, he ruled from council chambers, issuing laws that surprised even his allies. Taxes were lowered for the poor. Soldiers were paid on time. Trials were public. Lies were punished harder than failure. Slowly, painfully, trust began to grow. News came from the north. Jon Snow had been named Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. The wall stood, but something darker stirred beyond it. Robb read the message twice, his jaw tightening. No throne mattered if the realm fell to what waited in the cold. News also came from the east. Daenerys Targaryen had crossed the narrow sea with dragons and fire in her wake. Another conqueror, another promise of a better world forged through blood. Robb felt no fear, only tired understanding. Power always returned to the same question: who pays the price? One night, Robb finally sat alone before the Iron Throne. No guards, no banners. Just him and the twisted metal. He ran a hand along the cold blade edges and thought of Ned Stark, of honor, of mistakes, of everything the crown demanded and everything it destroyed. When dawn came, Robb made his choice. He did not crown himself king of the Seven Kingdoms. He declared the North independent, bound to the South by treaty, not chains. A council would rule the rest, chosen by merit, not blood. It was imperfect, fragile, but it was honest. Some lords left in fury, others stayed in stunned silence. The people, the people began to hope. Robb Stark returned north before winter fully broke, leaving behind a realm forever changed. He had survived betrayal, death, and power, and chosen restraint over glory. But the story was not finished. Because winter was still coming, the cold arrived early. It crept south like a living thing, killing crops, freezing rivers, silencing roads. Ravens carried the same message again and again. Dead men walking, villages gone dark, the night's watch stretched thin. Robb read every word with growing weight in his chest. Politics had nearly torn the world apart, but this threat did not care about crowns or borders. It only cared about death. Robb rode north with a smaller army than before. He did not need banners now. He needed speed. Winterfell welcomed him not with cheers, but with relief. The people knew this was the war that mattered. Steel was reforged, grain was rationed. Children were sent south. Every able body learned to hold a spear. At the wall, Jon Snow waited. Their reunion was quiet. No speeches, no apologies, just two brothers standing in the cold, older than they should have been. Jon spoke first, telling Robb what he had seen beyond the wall. The silence after his words felt heavier than fear. "They don't stop," Jon said. "They don't bargain." "Then we don't break," Robb replied. The first battle came before dawn. The dead came in waves, pale shapes moving without sound, eyes burning blue in the dark. Arrows shattered on frozen flesh. Men screamed as fallen friends rose against them. Fear spread like fire, but it did not win, because this time the realm stood together. Northern spears held the line. Knights from the south fought beside wildlings. Fire and dragonglass burned through the night. Robb fought at the front, not because he was king, but because leaders who hide lose men faster. When the sun rose, the field was ash and silence. It was not victory, just survival. The final stand came near Winterfell, where the dead pushed hardest, drawn by life and memory. Snow fell thick, choking the sky. Somewhere in the storm, the enemy leader watched, patient and ancient. Robb felt it, not fear, but understanding. This was the cost of the world's long neglect. The battle lasted until Robb could no longer feel his hands. When it ended, the dead lay still at last. Dawn broke weak and pale, but it broke. Robb stood among the survivors, blood frozen on his armor, breath shaking in his chest. He looked at the men and women around him, broken, alive, united and new. This was what all the wars should have been for. Years later, songs would try to change the truth. They would talk about crowns, thrones, and glory. Robb Stark would never correct them. He ruled the North until his hair turned gray, not as a legend, but as a man who learned too much too young and chose better anyway. When he finally died, it was quietly in Winterfell, with snow falling outside his window. The realm did not fall apart after him. That was his greatest victory, because in a world built on betrayal, Robb Stark proved that survival was not about being the strongest. It was about remembering who you were, even after the world tried to kill you. The North remembered. Years later, when the wars were stories and scars were just lines on old skin, the North was quiet again. Children played in Winterfell's yard where blood had once frozen to stone. Farmers argued about weather instead of banners. The direwolf flew not as a warning, but as a promise that no one would be forgotten again. They did not call Robb Stark a conqueror. They called him the king who ended the lying. He never built statues of himself. He never demanded songs. His name lived in smaller things, in fair trials, in full granaries, in borders held without cruelty. When disputes rose, people asked, what would Robb have done? And most times the answer was simple. Listen first. On the day he was buried beneath Winterfell, snow fell softly, as if the North itself was careful not to wake him. No crown rested on his grave, only a carved direwolf and a single line. He lived when he should have died, and because of that, Others lived too. Long after, travelers would still ask, what if Robb Stark had died at the Twins? And the North would answer, quietly but firmly, he didn't.